So we're starting a new series this weekend, and as I just mentioned last week, we talked about love. And in your notes, in my haste, I called the title today "Love," and that's not the title today. That was last week's title. So if you see "Love" on your handout, you can just scratch that out and write down "Dream Discovery." And we're going to be talking about Dream On over these next few weeks about dreams. I wonder, have you ever had a dream before in your life? Anyone ever had a dream? A couple of you have had dreams. Man, some of us have had all kinds of dreams. Maybe you had a dream to play pro football. And you say, oh, this is my big dream, or I want to play a sport professionally or go to the Olympics, or maybe you had a dream to be a ballerina or a movie star or a country western singer or something. I don't know what your dream might have been. But at some point in our life, we have these dreams, and at some point we start feeling like maybe we're too grown up to dream anymore. I'm older now, I'm more mature, and I shouldn't dream as much. And when we tell other people our dreams, they say things like, just be reasonable, or get your head out of the clouds, or don't get carried away with things. And we have these dreams, and we give up on them. Now, not every dream is actually going to happen that we have. Someone would say, oh, I had a dream, I wanted to walk on the moon. Well, it's probably not going to happen. And some of us have a dream, oh, I have a dream, I'm going to win the lottery someday. I can tell you, it's definitely not going to happen. But we have these dreams. And I believe, though, that God has a dream for you. God has a dream for you. Maybe you had a dream at one time in your life. Maybe you had a dream even that you felt God had given you. But now looking back on it, it feels kind of foolish. Like, what was I thinking? Who did I think I was thinking that God could use me in this way? As John Maxwell says, he says, a dream is an inspiring picture of the future that energizes your mind, will, and emotions, empowering you to do everything you can to achieve it. You ever hear people say, oh, I'm just living the dream. Hey, how you doing? Living the dream. Well, what does that mean? Sometimes it means absolutely nothing. But other times, they say living the dream, and that means I'm successful in life. Maybe they have a lot of money. Maybe they're retired now. Maybe life is a perpetual vacation. They're living in beautiful places, and they say, I'm just living the dream, baby. And sometimes we say that sarcastically because we're really not living the dream. Like, yeah, I'm just living the dream. And what if these things, though, aren't living the dream at all? What if the American dream is not God's dream? What if this pursuit of happiness, the pursuit of wealth and satisfaction is not what God has for you in your life? In your notes, jot this down, that God wants us to dream big dreams. God wants us to dream big dreams. He wants us to dream bold dreams. He's given each of us, I believe, a dream, and he's put it in our heart, a vision, a goal, something that he wants us to do and accomplish. And I wonder, are you pursuing the dream that God has given you? Or is it kind of lying dusty in a corner somewhere? So how do you get a dream? How do you get a dream? Here's a couple of things that I've noticed, a couple ways that I found that we can get a dream. The first one in your notes is that God simply gives you a dream. God just gives you one. You have a dream. One day you didn't have one, and now you have one. Some people have always had a sense of their calling and dream. Maybe you knew someone, maybe this was you at one point in your life where you always felt the need to help people, maybe medically, and you always wanted to be involved healing people. So you pursued a career with that, and now you feel really fulfilled because you're pursuing this calling. And some people always have this sense. I had friends growing up, and they always had a sense of what God wanted to use them to do. In my life, I didn't really have that same sense. I was kind of wandering around and trying a bunch of different things. But some people actually, they have this as long as they can remember. They say, I always just felt like my dream was to do this. Sometimes it's a literal dream, like you go to sleep at night and you have a literal dream. This happened to me once. Now I'm not talking about weird dreams, okay? I'm not talking about these kind of dreams where you jumped off a building and you're flying around the place. Don't go and try to live that one out, okay? Because it's not going to end well. But I had a dream once, and I had a dream that I was making t-shirts. And I woke up the next day, I'm like, wow, that sounds fun to make t-shirts. I don't mean like sewing them, but printing them. And little did I know, it's not fun at all. But regardless, I went out and I started a t-shirt business, which I ran for several years, making these t-shirts. Now, in the end, the business was somewhat of a failure, but I learned a lot of stuff throughout that. Learned how to run a business, and I was probably 15, 16 years old, and I had this business. I had a shop, and I was printing t-shirts. I learned how to do graphic design, learned all of these things through the context of this literal dream that I had once. Some of us just have this thing that always consumes our thoughts. And I'm not talking about potato chips or football. I'm not talking about these kind of things, but there's something that you always, if I could just accomplish this thing in my life, I would feel like my life counted. I would feel like I made a difference. So how do we know if a dream is from God or not? Because see, some dreams aren't from God. For example, anyone here maybe over 40 that used to play football? Anybody? Couple of guys. Guess what, guys? The Patriots aren't going to call you this week, okay? Sorry to disappoint, but that dream is probably over. In fact, I can pretty much guarantee it. You're like, oh, but I did this great touchdown 23 years ago. You should have seen it. It was awesome. I was running, and the crowd was going wild, and I'm still waiting for that phone call, baby. Well, I think that's the kind of dream maybe it's time to give up on. But there's other dreams that are from God. So how do I know if my dream is from God or not? In your notes, jot this down. Does your dream benefit yourself or does it benefit others? Who benefits from you achieving your dream? Because oftentimes the dreams that we have in our life, if we're quite honest about them, a dream to have a boat or a big house or a lot of money or to retire early, a lot of these dreams simply benefit me, myself, and I, and maybe those few people that are closest to me in my life. But a true dream that God puts in your heart is there for the benefit of others. So we're going to look at a dreamer in the Bible, probably the most famous dreamer in the Bible. In the Old Testament, the beginning part of the Bible, the older part of the Bible, we hear about a boy named Joseph. Now, Joseph was a 17-year-old tattletale brat of a boy. Okay, you'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. Somebody, I can't believe you called Joseph that. I mean, they made a movie about Joseph. No, let's get this straight. I'm going to read a verse in a moment, but before the verse that I read, it said, the very first thing we learn about Joseph is this. It says, he came in from the field to bring a bad report about his brothers. Anybody like a tattletale? That's what Joseph was. Joseph's coming and said, Dad, guess what they did out in the field? And his brothers did not like him one bit. In fact, he was the favorite child. Anyone in here the favorite child? Anyone? Okay, a couple of you guys are honest enough to, yeah, I'm the favorite child. I was a favorite. I tell all my kids separately that they're my favorite child. And one day I think they're going to argue about it. And I only have one. Belle, you're my favorite child. So just in case there's any debate about that. But here is Joseph, and he legit was the favorite child. In fact, he was so favored that his father made him and gave him an amazing Technicolor dream coat, right? At least that's what they tell us on Broadway. He gave him this coat of many colors, this very expensive robe, and I could just picture Joseph strutting around. Maybe you thought Joseph was like a nice, sweet guy. I don't see it. I think he was a brat, and you'll see why in a minute. Here we go. He's hated by his brothers. He's a tattletale. In Genesis 37, verse 5, it says, one night Joseph had a dream, and when he told his brothers about it, now wait a minute, Joseph, what are you doing telling your older brothers your dream? Okay, you have a dream. Why don't you just keep it to yourself? But no, he wants to go and tell his brothers all about it. And guess, I'm sure they were so open to this dream. They just wanted to hear his dream and encourage him in it. Listen to what it says. When he told his brothers about it, they hated him more than ever. They hated him more than ever. He says, listen to this dream, he said. We were out in the field, and we were tying up bundles of grain, and suddenly my bundle of grain stood up, and all your bundles of grain gathered around and bowed down before my bundle. I'm sure his brother's like, oh, that is a great dream, Joseph. We are so glad you told us that dream. You ever have people like that, like rubbing stuff in like that? Man, how did he think this was going to go over? I mean, they already hate him, and here he is. Hey, guys, guess what my dream was? All your bundles of grain fell down and bowed before mine. Well, let's see how the brothers responded in verse 8. Oh, I'm sure they were happy about this. His brothers responded, so you think you'll be our king, do you? Do you actually think you will reign over us? And guess what they did? They hated him all the more because of his dreams. And what else? The way he talked about them. You know somebody like that just talks about, like, just the way they talk about, well, my new Mercedes, I can't believe I had to take it in for an oil change, and they found out that there was a little tiny rip in the leather on the back seat. You can't really see it, but now I got to get the whole thing reupholstered. And you're like, oh, brother, like, boo-hoo for you. Come on, man. And that's what Joseph's doing. He's just rubbing it in. Hey, I had this dream that you guys bowed down to me. They hated him because of his dreams and the way he talked about it. He wasn't too smart. He was kind of being a brat. It's like the kid that got the present that you wanted. You know what I'm talking about? Hopefully it wasn't your brother or sister. And you're like, I just want this thing. I just want this one gift. I just want this one gift. I just want this one thing. I want this bike or something. And then the next day you see your friend got the very same bike for Christmas that you wanted, and you got a yo-yo, right? And you're like, wait a minute. This is not right. And then he's rubbing it in on top of it. Verse 9, soon Joseph had another dream. Oh, yay, Joseph. Having another dream. And again, guess what he does? First thing he does, runs out. Hey, brothers, guess what? Have no fear. I had another dream. I'm sure like, oh, yay, let's sit around and listen to Joseph's new dream. He told his brothers, listen, I had another dream. He said, the sun and the moon and 11 stars all bowed low to me. And I'm sure like, yeah, that's going to happen. Okay, so you're saying where are the 11 stars and who's the sun and moon? Mom and dad? And this time he told the dream to his dad as well as to his brothers. And his father scolded him. He says, what kind of dream is that? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come to bow to the ground before you? Verse 11 says, but while his brothers were jealous of Joseph, his father wondered what the dreams actually meant. Joseph just didn't know when to stop. Sometimes you just got to stop. You got to quit while you're ahead. You got a great dream. Maybe just keep it to yourself for a little bit. Don't try to tick everybody off in the world with this dream that you have. See, this dream, though, was just handed to him. And I think Joseph was probably bragging about it because he thought the dream was for him. He thought the dream was that everyone in his family was going to come and they were going to bow down before him, and he was going to be worth more than his family was. But the reality of it is that dream wasn't even for him. If you know the story, we'll be looking at it over the next several weeks. The dream wasn't really for him. The dream was given to him so that he could be the ruler and save all of the Israelites. He could save all of his brothers, his whole family from starvation and a plague or in a famine. See, he was just focused on everyone bowing down to him, but didn't see that God actually had a purpose bigger and beyond that. This is why it's not good to brag about the dream. We shouldn't brag about the dream that God's given us. Sometimes you need to keep it quiet for a while because sometimes they can turn into these selfish dreams. It's all about me. It's all about me. It's all about me. And jot this in your notes that selfish dreams can cloud us from hearing God's dream. We have these selfish dreams. Oh, it's all about me. I just want a good job. I want to make a lot of money. I want to have a good career. I want to have a good degree. I want to have all this. It's all about me, myself, and I, and those few people that are closest to me. John the Baptist was one that had a dream. John the Baptist had this dream that he was going to go out and he was going to preach and he was going to baptize people. And he was going to prepare the way for the Messiah. And he's out there and thousands of people would gather around to hear him speak. And he saw Jesus and he baptized Jesus and here's the Messiah and all this great stuff. And then guess what happened to all of his followers? They started following Jesus instead. And the few that stood with him, they're like, oh man, doesn't this tick you off? What's going on here? And John the Baptist said something so profound. And it's something that we need to realize whenever God puts a dream in our life, he might have a greater purpose than just me. And listen to what John said. He said in John 3:30, he says, he must become greater and greater, and I must become less and less. He realized that the dream wasn't all about him, it was all about God. And it was all about preparing the way. And in this act of humility, he said, the dream's not even about me. Jesus needs to become greater, and I need to become less. See, when we dream, we can see the final destination. We can see where God is calling us to be. It's like looking across and you see a mountain peak way off in the distance. It's like, that's where I want to be, on the summit of that mountain. And we see this final destination, but we don't always see the path to get there. See, because the path often goes in the opposite direction. It often goes through the valleys, through difficult times, through the ravines, through crossing rivers, going through dangerous territory in order to get to that ultimate destination where God has called you. So sometimes God just gives you a dream. Next thing is sometimes something just ticks you off in your notes. Something ticks you off and you're like, man, now let me just clarify here. I'm not talking about the fact that when your husband watches TV, he's clipping his toenails into the carpet. I'm not saying that kind of ticking you off. I'm not saying like it ticks me off when I'm driving down the road and somebody cuts in front of me and they didn't at least have the courtesy to use their blinker. That ticks me off. I'm not talking about these kind of things, but sometimes, in your notes, write this down, sometimes our dream comes to us as problems that we are called to fix. Sometimes God allows us to be exposed to certain situations in our life because he wants us to fix them, because he wants us to do something about it. Over the years in ministry, I've had many people come and say, oh, we need to go out, we need to do this, we need to help these people, we need to do this, we need to do this, you need to do this. And basically what they're saying is you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to start this new thing in the church so that you can go and do this. And I'm like, wait a minute. If God gave this to you, then maybe he wants you to do. Well, I don't want to do it. No, you should do it, Pastor. I'm like, no, not me. Don't look at me. My job is to equip you to do the work of the ministry. Well, I don't know if I can do it. If God's given you a dream, if God has shown you a problem in this world, maybe it's because he wants you to do something about it. Things that frustrate us, things that we're discontent about. Listen to Moses. He kind of came upon his dream this way. In Exodus 2:11. Now Moses was raised, he was an Israelite, but he was raised in the palace of the Egyptians. So he had all the privileges. And it says, many years later when Moses had grown up, he went out to visit his own people, the Hebrews, and he saw how hard they were forced to work. So he's just going out there to check up on his people, and he sees how hard they're working. They're slaves here. And during his visit, he saw an Egyptian beating one of his fellow Hebrews. And Moses could not take it any longer. He's like, I've had enough. I'm going to do something about this. And he went over there and he beat the guy to death. Now, that probably wasn't the best approach here. Moses should have just stepped back a little bit and said, okay, maybe I'm supposed to do something. But no, Moses was so ticked off, he just jumped in there and started beating this guy to death. He ended up running for his life and spending 40 years in a wilderness before he was able to come back and actually start to work on that dream that God had given him. But he saw this abuse happening, and he had to do something about it. Maybe God has given you a dream. to fight a certain injustice that you see. People that are marginalized, people that are abused and oppressed. And maybe God has put that on your heart to serve them or to change something in this world, to help the hurting. And you know what our tendency is, though? When we start to get bothered by something, we start to get bothered by injustice, we try to turn the other way. So maybe if I turn this other way, I can forget about it. You know what God wants us to do, though? When there's these things, these injustices that cause this holy anger, I say embrace it, feed it, be around it even more. Go in those situations, because the chances are good that God has called you to do something about it. Because in your notes, write this down. God will use the situations in your life as fertilizer for your dream. God will allow you to see things. There's things that you've seen that I've never seen. There's injustices that you've seen time and time again. You're like, why does God allow me always to see these things? Maybe because he's calling you to do something about it. Well, what about the abuses in my past? What about the things that I was brought up in my childhood? What about the rejection I've experienced? All these things, the addiction that I had to go through. What about all of these things that I had to go through? Maybe God is using that simply as fertilizer in the dream that he's given you, so that you can go out and actually accomplish great things for him. God doesn't waste the experiences in our life. So I wonder, what makes you mad? What infuriates you? What do you just look at and say, I just wish I could do something about this situation? And those are oftentimes the things that God has called you to fix. When I was younger, one of the things that I hated was I hated the idea of people being bored in church. And I saw people say, oh, church is just boring. And I hated that idea. I hated the idea that people would go to church and they would be judged for how they looked and how they talked and how they acted. And if they didn't know all the Christian lingo and all this stuff. I just hated that. I hated when people that called themselves followers of Christ weren't open and weren't focused on reaching out to people that were not far from Christ. They tried to avoid people that didn't love God rather than embracing them. That just angered me so much, to the point that God said, okay, it's time to do something about it and create a church that embraces love rather than being judgmental. See the things that frustrate us in life, often God has called us to fix. It's like last week, I told you guys about how the church had gotten broken into, and we had 4 instruments that were stolen. 2 of them were mine and 2 of them were George's. And I hate that. Not the fact that somebody came and stole from me. That, and we forgave them right away. But the fact that there's people out there hurting so much and so possibly addicted to things that they have to go in and rob and steal in order just to get their next fix. And man, I just hate that. It breaks my heart. And I'm pretty convinced that whoever it was that stole these things, last Sunday, never in their life had they had more people praying for them and for their soul than they did last week as we were praying for them. And it's amazing how God worked, because I mean we forgave them right away, and then we kind of started getting excited. George and I were like, okay, we get to go buy new instruments, and this is fun. And so George was out there, and he was searching for a new instrument or new guitar for himself, and he sees a guitar very similar to the one that he had before, and he looks on the back of the guitar, shows a picture, and it had a penny glued to the back of the headstock, and he's like, wait a minute. That's my guitar. Like, what's going on here? And then he starts looking around, and he sees another guitar, and it's, my 12-string semi-hollow body, which is kind of a unique guitar. Not many people have. He's like, wait a minute, I recognize that. And then he saw, a blue Fender jazz bass that has this little thing that's called a hip shot. It changes the tuning on it. And it's like, wait, these are 2 iconic of pieces for this store just to magically have them 2 days after they were stolen from us. So we contacted the police, and the police went down, and they were kind enough to confiscate those. We haven't gotten them back yet, but we're supposed to be getting them back this week. So we are so grateful to God for that. One of them is still missing, but it's all good, I mean, and again, it wasn't so much about that, but my prayer is still that God will use this situation in the lives, because, I mean, one of the guys is going to end up having a call from our friendly police department to talk about this whole experience, and I hope, though, that God uses this in a way. I don't care about getting the instruments back, but uses it in a way to draw this individual closer to him. God uses it to give them the recovery and the healing that they need. Another way that we can get a dream is to surround yourself with dreamers. When you surround yourself with dreamers, you know what happens? You start to catch their dream. Or at least they start to begin to point you towards your dream. And that's one thing that here at Thrive, we want to embrace. We want to fertilize the dreams that God has given you and the dreams that God has given us. And if you don't have a dream, we say, come on and align yourself with the dream that God has given us to be a church where unchurched people love to go, a church that is loving and embracing, that's not looking down at people, that we focus on Jesus Christ first and foremost. That's our passion. And we want to engage you with that dream and also to help you to be able to pursue the dreams that God has put in your life. Because when you get around people who have a dream, then you'll start to get a dream yourself. Because most times people are hanging out with losers. You ever hung out with a loser before? Anyone sitting right next? No, don't do that. We hang out with losers, and what happens? You hang out with losers, you become a loser. It's like this story I read of a farmer. And he was out in the wilderness doing something, and he happened to come across a young eagle who had apparently hurt its wing or something. So the farmer had compassion on this eagle, and he got it, and he bundled it up, and he brought it back to his farm, where he happened to raise a bunch of chickens. I don't know, is that a flock or a herd or what? I don't know. What do you call a bunch of chickens? Flock? Okay, we'll go with flock. I know crows is a murder of crows. Isn't that horrible? Anyhow, maybe it's a murder of chickens too. I don't know. That's not in my notes. I'm just kind of going off the cuff here. But he brings this eagle back and he puts it in with the chickens. And he's kind of nursing it back to health and letting the wing repair. And as this young eagle looks around at all the chickens, he sees the chickens doing what chickens do, right? They peck in the sand and they get seeds and worms and whatever it is that chickens eat. And so the eagle follows their example and starts pecking in the dirt and eating the little seeds and bugs and whatever it is that chickens eat. And he basically just fits right in. And one day, after his wing is long since healed, and this eagle's going around pecking in the dirt for seeds, and he looks up and he sees a majestic eagle soaring hundreds of feet up. And he's looking up and feels this call, like maybe I was made for something more than just picking here in the dirt. And the other chicken's like, no, you can't do that. You don't got what it takes. You're just a chicken. Once you're a chicken, you're always a chicken. And sometimes that's how we are, right? Once you're a chicken, you're always a chicken. And we have chickens around us saying, you can't soar with the eagles, but if God has given you a dream to soar with the eagles, you better stretch out those wings and fly. And fly towards what God has wanted you to do. Because sometimes we'll never grow bigger in the environment that we're in because it's just holding us in. It's like a bonsai tree. You ever have a bonsai tree? I guess they're pretty easy to take care of. They're kind of hard to kill. But let me tell you, I was successful at killing one. I had a bonsai tree, and it was little. It was in this little pot, and it's this old tree in a little pot. I've seen some that are hundreds of years old before, and it's this old, knotty tree in a little pot, and they're kind of cute. But you look at it like, this could have been a giant oak tree. But it's not because of the container it was in. Its environment kept it. And sometimes the environments that we're in keep us. They hold us down. They hold us back. See, a dream will motivate you. It's like nuclear energy in your soul that empowers you. Maybe some of you have an excuse. Oh, I'm just too old. I'm just too old to pursue the dreams that God has given me, so I've given up on them. Well, there was a guy named Harlan Sanders, and he was 65 years old, and he had an idea that was finger-licking good, and we call him Colonel Sanders now, and he sold his first franchise, KFC, when he was 65 and made millions off of that. Ray Kroc was 50 years old when he had the idea to start franchising McDonald's. Laura Ingalls Wilder was 65 years old when she wrote Little House on the Prairie. I was on a roll there, and my mind went blank. Sorry. And Grandma Moses, she was a painter, and she started painting at 78 years old. And only a few years back, one of her paintings sold for over like $1.2 million. You're not too old. You're in your prime right now. Don't let the devil tell you that you're too old. It doesn't matter how old you are. You should have a dream no matter how old. And some of you, you're saying, well, I'm just too young, or I don't know if I can accomplish all the dreams. Oh, I had dreams once, but they just never came true. I don't think I'm going to ever accomplish my dreams. Stop whining about not accomplishing your dreams yet. You're only 23 years old. Come on. It's time to move forward. God has put a dream in you. Tell somebody that I'm in the best years of my life. Go ahead, tell them. I'm in the best years of my life right now because God has put a dream inside of you. And if you want to know God's dream, here, write this in your notes, that first you need to get to know God. We need to get to know God because as we get to know him, he'll begin to wake up that dream that's inside of us. We get to know the one who can reveal it to us and who can fulfill it. We need to dream bigger, not smaller. Don't be like the little bonsai tree. We need to be dreaming bigger. We need to be dreaming bolder. We need to be dreaming greater things. Because everything worth doing, every accomplishment, every scientific advance, every humanitarian advance, everything that has happened that was worth doing in life was started by someone who dared to have a dream. And even when other people said, oh, you can't do that, they said, well, I'm just going to keep dreaming. I'm going to keep moving forward. I have a big dream. As it says in Ephesians 3:20, he says, now all glory to God, who is able through his mighty power at work within us to accomplish infinitely more than we might ask or think. God is able to accomplish infinitely more than whatever dream you have. God's dream is bigger. Whatever idea you have, God's idea is bigger. You can't outdream God, I guarantee you. In fact, about a week and a half ago, I took the interns and my wife, and we went on a road trip, and we literally drove around all of Connecticut. We went to every four corner of the state, and let me tell you, it's a long drive, and it's a long drive to be stuck in the car, especially when you're in the northern part of the state and there's no food for like an hour and a half, and everybody's hungry. And we're like, we're going to go though, and we're going to pray. We're going to claim this area for God. We're going to pray for revival. We're going to pray for God to do big things in our state. And I believe that we can't outdream God because he wants this even more than we do. He wants people to come to knowledge of him, to get their relationship right with him even more than we do. And so we circle the state praying that God would do some great things. Said, God, this land is your land. We believe that you want to do some great things here. But I'm tired of having the world have bigger dreams than we have in the church. I'm tired of the world saying, oh, we're going to pump your home full of garbage 24 hours a day through the internet, through TV, through the phone, through the radio, through all this stuff. We're going to pump garbage. And they've got all this budgets and all this money. And I'm tired of their dream being bigger than our dream. Because God has given us a dream. We have a dream to tell people the good news. We have a dream to love people that are unlovable. We have a dream that we can reach people that are far from God and help them to grow to be fully devoted followers of Jesus Christ. I don't want to dream smaller. I don't want to listen to people that say, you can't do this. When we looked to start the church, there was people that said, you can't do this. You're not ready for this. We did it anyhow because I don't want to dream smaller. I want to dream bigger. I want to dream bolder. Let's dream bolder together because you're part of God's plan. We need to feed the dream that God has put inside of us.